the tires, because of the width and because of the tremendous speed and heat, have begun to chunk a little bit, and you can see big pieces of rubber out of the middle of that tire.
Must have run over a piece of trash, you know, a piece of metal on the road and blew a tire. All of a sudden, it sounded like a double-barrel shotgun went off, and the car reached over and hit the wall. Was it a solid hit? Well, it felt pretty solid. I don't know.
There's A.J. Floyd burning rubber on his way back into the action.
Last Sunday's Coca-Cola 600 reminded us that in wars, there are casualties.
It was another ugly battle in the Winston Cup tire war.
NASCAR ruled that the 1,100 tires Goodyear brought to the track were illegal.
Hoosier tires were thrown out because they were too wide.
We're really a little bit disappointed that the tire companies can't get this solved by now, that people are still crashing cars like this.
The sad spectacle at Charlotte Sunday reminds us that tire wars are like most other wars. Nobody won, and everybody lost.
Lake Speed, Morgan Shepherd, and Buddy Baker have all indicated they will run Hoosier tires in the 500. Our Jerry Punch talked with Hoosier's Bob Newton about that company's history.
We're 25 years now. In fact, last year it was our silver anniversary building race tires. I think the product is going to sell itself. I think we've earned our respect and paid our dues, and if you're good, it will show.
Do you feel like that if the Hoosiers are quick in qualifying, you may see some of the more established names, your dad and some of the other older competitors who have been around a lot longer and with Goodyear making the switch?
I think it's a very strong possibility. What we're all here for is to go out and win races, and we've got to be in a position where if the Hoosiers are the fastest or the Goodyears are the fastest, we're not locked in and getting beat by something else.
So come February or March even, when they say, how about them Hoosiers? They may be talking about Bobby Knight's boys, but they may also be talking about Bob Newton's guys.
Bobby Allison high. Davey Allison trying the inside move. Bobby Allison holds him off. They come to the stripe, and the winner of the 30th annual Great American Race, Bobby Allison. Davey Allison, his son, in second.
And that flag is unfurled. Into turn one, and Morgan Shepherd sports out in front.
Leo Mail has joined me here as head of the racing department for Goodyear. You guys have had it all your way since KO won on some other kind of tire years and years and years ago. Now you've got some competition. How do you respond to the Hoosier threat?
Well, we think it's great to have somebody to compete against. We've been really cooperating with NASCAR for 15 years, and we really haven't tried to make the tires go faster.
Here they come down to the line to finish it this afternoon. The checkers are out. And Alabama's Neil Bonnett, fourth a week ago at Daytona, comes back and wins here today.
His win was the first for Hoosier tires in Winston Cup, and Morgan Shepherd's pole was also a first for Hoosier.
The team is ready to jump. Turn 4 out, down through the trioval. The checkered flag is at the ready, and Neil Bonnett in the Valvoline Pontiac strikes gold.
The stars of this race, Hoosier tire drivers. Lake Speed couldn't hold off the patient Neil Bonnet, who went 4 wide, bided his time, used those Hoosier tires wisely, and drove into the lead for good with 20 laps to go. The Hoosier guys like Bonnet stayed glued to the bottom and finished 1, 2, 3.
Bob Newton with Hoosier Tire. I've known him all my life. When I used to run short track, I ran his tires a lot. And when he told me he was coming Winston Cup racing, I knew he wouldn't be here playing. He'd be here trying to win races. And he's got his whole family involved. I like that. And we're running his tires. And I told Bob, I said, the first time Goodyear beats you, I'm going to jump back on Goodyear's. And we've got too good a race team to be locked down. But right now, boy, the Hoosiers are on top of it.
How good are those Hoosiers really?
Well, they've been good for us. You know, we ran them at Daytona. We won Richmond with them. We ran them at Rockingham, won that race. They've been awful good at every race so far. We've looked at Goodyear and Hoosier, and Hoosier's been our best tire for the year. So we're going to change whenever they get competitive and we see one better than the other, we'll run the fastest tire.
So for Neil Bonnet and Rimac, 3 weeks, 3 wins, and they only had to travel 24,000 miles to get them.
Well, there wasn't much of a tire war at Atlanta. Goodyear constructed a new tire that was much more competitive with Hoosiers. In fact, only 2 drivers, Lake Speed and Rick Wilson, started the race on Hoosier tires.
Well, the top 20 finishers in that race ran on Goodyear tires. An impressive comeback after they lost the last 2 races to cars on Hoosier rubber. Hoosier vowed to retaliate this weekend at Darlington.
And after 163 races, Lake Speed finally reaches his goal, a major league victory.
Are you committed to Hoosier all year? Can you jump back and forth?
Well, Bob Newton, when he came to us originally, he understood that there was no way that I could stake my whole race team, the career, the year, the sponsorship, and everything on a product with a total commitment. But he just said, you know, if the tire's good enough, we'd like for you to run it. If it's not good enough, we wouldn't blame you one bit from going next door and buying the others.
Goodyear, following Hoosier's lead, is allowing even its most loyal teams to at least experiment with Hoosiers.
Now, this festival of speed here at Charlotte began with a big surprise last Sunday, the 4th annual running of the Winston. With all the pre-race hype, everybody was geared for a replay of last year's fender-bashing battle among top-line drivers. What happened instead was a series of grinding crashes brought on by blown tires.
After months of hoopla, the Winston finally got underway as expected. The first leg of the race was played out conservatively. After mandatory pit stops, Dale Earnhardt's crew had their driver out front, trying to hold off Davey Allison. But Davey was simply too strong and passed Dale for the lead and the first leg victory. As the checkered flag flew, Earnhardt cut a tire, sending him hard into the wall. He limped home in what seemed to be a ruined car. But the Richard Childress team miraculously put the front end back together in time for the second leg. On the restart, Dale gave it his best shot, but the car was shot. While he faded, Waltrip set the pace until Lake Speed barreled by for the lead. Speed was in command until Ricky Rudd cut a tire and brought out the caution. Rudd was sent to the hospital with torn ligaments in his left knee. On the restart, Bill Elliott sent Lake Speed to second place. Elliott, on Hoosier tires, took the second leg convincingly. With Elliott on worn tires and Speed fighting an ill-handling car, Terry Labonte made it look easy. He passed the two and easily took home the $200,000 first-place money.
There's been a battle between tire manufacturers all year long in Winston Cup racing, but a significant development occurred in Charlotte this week prior to qualifying for the World 600. And John Kernan joins us now from Charlotte Motor Speedway with an explanation. John?
Well, Bob, the tire wars between Goodyear and Hoosier take on an entirely new meaning this week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Many of the Goodyear drivers have now switched to their competition, not because they wanted to, but out of necessity.
36 hours after the Winston, Goodyear made a stunning decision. They chose to withdraw tires from this weekend's races. Not since 1957 had the Akron company missed a Winston Cup race. Goodyear is locked in a David and Goliath tire war with tiny Hoosier Tire Company. In its quest for supremacy, Goodyear built a Charlotte tire that was very fast, but not very durable.
We had 3 tires that lost air rapidly. We hate to use the word blowout, but we had 3 tires that lost air on Sunday and caused accidents, or nearly caused accidents, and we had several more that could have caused accidents.
Safety is that #1 thing we're interested in. I mean, that's what we're all interested in here. We like the speed, and we like
the excitement, but I'll tell you what, you know, you don't compromise safety.
Goodyear's withdrawal triggered the return of hundreds of unused tires. Even the most loyal Goodyear contract teams yielded to the inevitable and went shopping for Hoosiers in time for a rain-shortened practice session Tuesday afternoon. For every race, NASCAR requires participating tire companies to supply enough rubber for the entire field. For the first time, Hoosier technicians who have won 3 races this year confronted the task of actually mounting their entire Charlotte inventory, 1,400 tires. The Goodyear men looked on. But Tuesday afternoon brought news that a deal had been struck. The Goodyear trucks hauling away all that bad rubber would return within a matter of hours, bringing leftover Daytona tires for any teams that wanted them. That move required the waiver of one of NASCAR's tire rules, a concession made with Hoosier's consent. The problem is Daytona tires don't go very fast here at Charlotte.
It certainly wouldn't be what we choose here because of speed, but it's a good, proven, reliable, durable tire. And we happen to have the required number of them in the warehouse.
Of the 55 cars that attempted Wednesday qualifying, only Dave Marcus wore Goodyears. He failed to make the top 20. But some drivers' adjustments to the unfamiliar Hoosiers were even less successful. Larry Pearson's run ended with this spin, which included a brush with the wall.
And joining me, Jeff Bodine, Benny Parsons, and Darrell Waltrip. What do you collectively think that we can expect this weekend, Jeff?
You know, now we're thrown in this tire business that we really don't know what's going to happen until it happens, and just really, you go around the garage area right now and everyone's a little confused. What brand of tire are you going to use? We don't know yet. How are they going to work? We don't know yet. Everyone's going to have to tune in like we are to see what happens.
Benny, this guy went 175 miles an hour in practice last week. Speed's astronomical.
Well, they are. The tires, the war between Hoosier and Goodyear is heating up, and the tires are getting where they stick better and better and better, and that's maybe some of the problems that they're sticking too well.
Charlotte and Dover are the 2 toughest tracks on the circuit, and for some reason the big guy ain't figured that out.
In Winston Cup stock car racing, Goodyear and Hoosier are having a so-called tire war, and the media love that term because it's short and snappy and implies lots of drama and action. But last Sunday's Coca-Cola 600 reminded us that in wars, there are casualties. This wasn't so much a race as a kamikaze mission. Stuck on tires that were hopelessly inadequate, the drivers raced on, and their tires exploded, and they hurtled helplessly into the walls. Before his blowout, Rick Wilson's first career win seemed assured. Harry Gant broke his leg in 2 places and will miss races for the first time in 9 years. Neil Bonnett pounded the concrete in a painful case of deja vu. Neil still carries a huge pin and a handful of screws in his leg after a blowout-induced crash here last year. This time he escaped with strained ligaments, leaving his right arm in a sling. Sterling Marlin and Dave Marcus were even more fortunate when Sterling's tire blew and left him with no steering. Marlin went limping down the backstretch. Dave Marcus slammed the meandering Oldsmobile at full throttle and was launched into the wall. That could have been the most disastrous wreck of the day, but the concrete contact brought Marcus back to earth. This race stopped being fun early on, and by the end of the long and painful afternoon, those who didn't crash felt for those who did.
That was the hardest race, emotionally, I've ever run in my life. Seeing guys run good, having tires to go down on them or whatever, and hit the wall really made me nervous all day, but Jeff and everybody did a good job of keeping me out of trouble.
The sad spectacle at Charlotte Sunday reminds us that tire wars are like most other wars. Nobody won, and everybody lost.
Bill Elliott is now 2 for 2 in the second half of the Winston Cup stock car season. Bill's easy win at Pocono Sunday came on Hoosier tires after NASCAR ruled that the 1,100 tires Goodyear brought to the track were illegal.
The regulation is intended to control speed. But when you're making tires out of nylon and rubber, it's a natural thing that you get variation. Rubber stretches and nylon stretches. So we made a mistake and we ended up 0.15 inches too wide. We do not feel this would affect the speed of the tire at all.
Well, either way, NASCAR's decision made Pocono the first Winston Cup race in 30 years to run with no Goodyear tires in the field. But unlike the World 600 disaster, when more than 20 cars blew Hoosier tires, the blistering that occurred at Pocono produced no incidents.
Well, Dave, it was another ugly battle in the Winston Cup tire war. First of all, the Hoosier tires were thrown out because they were too wide. The same infraction that got the Goodyears disqualified at Pocono last month. And then the Goodyears, on which the entire field was left to race, they had real problems. So again Sunday, the key was to go fast enough to win without encountering this. Ricky Rudd, still gimpy from his blown tire crash at Charlotte last May, was one of the few who didn't blister tires. And while the drivers were dueling, their teams were dealing for more tires. J.D. McDuffie spent his race scuffing in tires, and Terry Labonte was the recipient. Patty Moise doing the same for Rusty Wallace. The race was close because nearly half the laps were under yellow, mostly tire-related. Now, the wild duel for the finish. Rudd in front of point leader Rusty Wallace, who's going for his 4th straight road course win. Rusty puts the heat on, pushing, shoving, trying to barge his way into the lead, finally running all 4 wheels off the racetrack in a wild dash to the flag. Rudd gets there first in this sensational finish.
Well, Sunday's Winston Cup race at Dover once again pointed out the consequences of the tire war that NASCAR has been plagued with nearly all season. All during practice and qualifying, and in fact, for the first 35 laps of the race, there was no indication there would be a tire problem. Pole sitter Mark Martin's ride to the wall after his right front went down was the first indication that indeed tires would become the story of the race.
At the same moment, Kenny Schrader slammed the concrete at the other end of the track. During the subsequent pit stops, blistered tires were everywhere. The crashes continued with numbing regularity. Richard Petty was next, Derek Cope. Schrader suffered a second and final cuffing of the day. And finally, Alan Kowicki spoke for a fraternity getting a little tired of this spectacle.
Not only did it cost us our chance for a win or good finish in this race, but we wrecked a race car in the process. And it's not like this is the second week in a row it's been happening. It's been happening all year long. We're really a little bit disappointed that the tire companies can't get this solved by now, that people are still crashing cars like this. You know, fortunately, the cars are pretty safe and no one got hurt.
Some have hinted possibly a driver boycott at Charlotte. You remember the damage and destruction that occurred there earlier this year. When I talked with Darrell Waltrip yesterday via satellite, he said no, it has never been considered, but that in order to be successful, racers have to have supreme confidence in themselves and their cars.
With the tire situation, you don't. Bristol, Tennessee, blew a right front tire and I hit the wall harder than I've hit anything and I don't know when. And it scared me. I mean, I blew that tire and it literally scared me. Before I ever hit the wall, I was scared that I was going to be hurt badly. And to be able to get out and walk away and look back at my destroyed race car, all because I blew a right front tire.
In today's racing with competition, you have to run really kind of on the close edge of blistering a tire. If you don't, you'll get beat. It's that simple.
This tire issue is something I've never had to address. I can remember 20 years ago having Buddy Baker and a lot of the drivers, Darrell Derringer, and drivers that developed tires in that time with interliners, talk about the tire wars and the wounds that they had from them and the effects that it had on them. I never thought I'd see the day in my career when I had to face those same situations. I don't like it. It has changed the way I drive. I think it's affected a lot of guys out there on the racetrack.
I think you'll see it stabilize out, and the 2 tire companies will be close together as far as the tires, and I think you'll see a lot of the problems that happen, you know, be eliminated.
Now, the bias ply tire has been around in Winston Cup racing forever. The radial tire is fairly new. The difference isn't really visible from the outside. It's the way the tires are constructed, the inside fabric that's different. Now, if we took one thread of one fabric of the bias ply tire and we followed it, that one thread would come up the sidewall on an angle like this, across the tread, and down the other side. Now, that is a bias ply tire. The radial tire now, it starts, the same thread would start right here and go straight across the tread and straight down the other side. But the engineers have really developed a better and better tire, and it looks like they're here to stay.
Well, here in Daytona 89, there is a sense of deja vu. You know that feeling? I've been here before. Remember last year, the 1988 Speedweek's tiny Hoosier tire comes here to challenge Goodyear, kicked off a tire war that lasted all year long. Blown tires, driver injuries, product recall, controversy that marred the entire season. And now, in 89, it's deja vu.
Steve, during all the tests that were run here in December and January, it was done on the new radial tires that Goodyear had touted so highly that this was the tire of the future for Winston Cup competition. But after they got here, it didn't quite work out that way.
As you said, everybody thought it was going to be the hot tip of the year. The radials would hold up longer, they wouldn't have to worry about stagger as much, and would be more consistent than the bias ply tire.
The first signs of trouble came Friday morning when Dale Earnhardt returned to the pits with his car on a hook. Although the car suffered only minor damage, the word was out. A blown tire had sent Dale's car into the wall. While car owner Richard Childress offered new sets of Hoosiers, the team banged out the damage.
Then Bill Elliott also blew a right front, crashed his car, and broke his left wrist.
He returned to the track early Saturday morning, nursing the injury and unsure of his upcoming races in Daytona.
Well, as it stands from what I run, I don't see how I can run the 500 all day long. You know, the way it looks, I'm going to run my one lap, get out, put somebody else in the car.
Then came the announcement that Goodyear was pulling their radial tires from all Daytona competition.
Well, basically, we withdrawn the tire that we had started the month to run. We had two tire punctures or blowouts yesterday. The result was that we don't really know exactly what happened to those two tires. We had 33 ARCA cars that ran the last 2 days, and not one of them had a problem. It's just the two, it turned out to be Bill Elliott and Dale Earnhardt that had the problem.
Well, I suppose it's easy for me to say I think it was an overreaction, but I can see where they're coming from. They certainly don't want a bunch of drivers getting hurt on the Goodyear tires in the race. So, I mean, they have to look at the safety standpoint, too. You know, I did all the tests. We did 100-mile runs, 198 mile an hour, no problem. So I felt like the tire was safe. The tires have been raced on the IROC cars for 5 years.
In just their second year on the Winston Cup circuit, the upstart Hoosier Tire Company refuses to even research the radial. Hoosier Tire President Bob Newton has stated matter-of-factly that a radial tire on a 3,500-pound stock car with a 9-inch wheel at 200 miles an hour is just not an option.
Michelin or Firestone, anybody could have built one, and it will not hold up. If they made it heavy enough where it wouldn't have a blowout problem or a rapid loss of air, whatever you want to call it, then you would be into too much heat with it. It's just the way it's built, and there's been no innovation in changing the radial. I mean, you can't change it. It's a belted tire. It has a belt around it like you have around your waist. And with that principle, it will not work on oval track racing. And if you go to short tracks where their corners are tighter, then you get the other end of the spectrum. Tires don't blow out, then you just have a loss of traction.
After 17 years of effort, the Daytona 500 belongs to Franklin, Tennessee's Darrell Waltrip. He's done it.
For Goodyear, it's back to the drawing board and more testing. For Hoosier, it's another notch in their belt in their continuing saga of David versus Goliath.
NASCAR's Winston Cup division tried the radial tires at Daytona in February, but they were withdrawn following tire-related accidents by Dale Earnhardt and Bill Elliott. Well, the radials will be tried again this weekend at North Wilkesboro, that despite a recent testing crash by Ken Schrader at that 5/8-mile facility. Will the teams like the radials, or will they go with the Hoosier bias plies? Well, join us Sunday at 1 o'clock for the answer.
Well, the Goodyear radial played a major part even before the running of the first Union 400, as many of the cars opted to go with the radial during qualifying. One exception, though, was Rusty Wallace, as he changed at the very last minute to Hoosier tires, and he went out and ripped off a big lap and sat on the pole.
Pace car pulls off the track. The fans stand and cheer as the field comes down for a start of the first Union 400, and the race is underway.
Here's a change of lead as Jeff Bodine goes on top, and here comes Dale Earnhardt right behind him. Rusty slipped from first to third.
And I think that we're seeing the tire situation change right quickly there. Rusty on the BUSCH tires, they ran good for a few laps, and then the Goodyear started coming in.
Interesting conversation this morning between Rusty Wallace and Dale Earnhardt. And Earnhardt told Rusty, said, hey, I'm going to lap you in about 60 laps. And Rusty said, well, not if we get a yellow flag, you won't.
Now, Rusty Wallace did come in for a pit stop and got 4 Goodyear radials.
He's 2.5 laps down now, Bob. He was a lap down before he came in, lost another lap and a half, but you can see the Goodyears have really put him on the move again.
This is the wear mark. This is how you judge how the tire is wearing. And so far in 100 laps, 0 wear. The tire is sticking to the racetrack and not wearing. Looks like they've run all day.
This man here, Leo Mel, has led the Goodyear charge, and Leo, you got to be happy about the performance of these radial tires.
I really am. The Eagle radials ran great today. I'm really proud of the engineers and production guys. They sort of did this project. A lot of people said it wouldn't work, but it worked great today.
Here comes Earnhardt off the corner. He's going to win the race.
How about the Goodyear radial?
Well, it worked real good. Developed a good tire. Everybody was skeptical about this tire, Benny, and we practiced with it up here, tested with it, and then when we practiced yesterday evening, it just felt so good after you ran it about 10 or 15 laps, and I could really start punishing it then.
These championship-winning drivers have one thing in common: Goodyear Racing Eagles. The champions know, and it's why we say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Well, Butch, you finally won over in the Busch Grand National Division of NASCAR.
Thank you very much. And first off, I'd like to welcome Bob Newton and Hoosier Tire back to Busch Grand National Racing. Heck of a tire.
We have an unusual development in Busch Grand National short track racing. The 25 car of Jimmy Hensley is the only car that we show on the lead lap at this point. Hensley's last victory came in June at the Hickory Motor Speedway. He was on Goodyear tires that day. He's on Hoosier this afternoon.
Up next, driving the number 51 Country Time Lumina.
Now, normally during speed weeks, the drivers are all giddy and happy, excited to be here, pumped up, laughing and joking with one another. But that hasn't necessarily been the case this week. Everybody has gone out with a very businesslike approach to their job of preparing for the Daytona 500. That's because we have had tragedy here.
This was to have been a glorious opening to a new NASCAR season. It's not. There's a sense of sadness throughout the field today because on Friday during noontime practice, Neil Bonnett, one of the top drivers of all time, and the man who has spent time in our CBS announce booth in recent seasons, crashed to his death.
A lot of people wondered why would he come back after his accident in 1990 and want to get in a race car again. He knew the risk that could be involved. But that's what he wanted to do, and you have to respect anyone for doing exactly what they want to do. And if there's any consolation in this, we know that Neil did die doing what he wanted to do.
And I guess the next asked question, how can these guys go out and qualify today after what happened to Neil yesterday? It's what they do. It's how they make their living. It's what they do. And again, you never think it's going to happen to you.
Hoosier Tire has once again thrown its hat into the ring, and it's given them another choice to decide whether to go with Hoosier or Goodyear. Now, last month in winter testing here at Daytona, the Hoosier teams were consistently faster than most of the teams on Goodyears. So, with a third of the field on Hoosiers today, the next 90 minutes will settle the first battle of Tire Wars 94.
And there's Loy Allen going by, taking the green flag on the Hooters Ford.
See what it is out of turn 4. 187.8 is the fastest there. 189.3. He's going to do it.
He seems to be picking up speed every turn of the wheel. Let's see, 189.9.
And the second lap, 190.158. The first driver in the 190s today.
We're with Bob Newton, who is the president of Hoosier Tire. And Bob, you own the operation. You decided to come back to Winston Cup Racing. Got to be feeling awfully good right now. Loy Allen has run well. Darrell Waltrip, Greg Sachs. Your cars, some 23 of them in the garage area, are showing well in qualifying.
Yeah, it's really been good. It's been an excellent week so far.
It's an enormous commitment for you. NASCAR rules say you have to go to every racetrack with enough tires for the entire field. That means about 53,000 tires you got to build for 1994.
That's right, plus another 20-some thousand for the BUSCH Grand National.
It is Loy Allen Jr. who has captured the pole position for this year's running of the Daytona 500.
'93 NASCAR Dash champion Rodney Orr was killed Monday in a Winston Cup practice crash.
Witnesses say his Ford Thunderbird flipped at a high speed and the driver's side roof hit the wall.
He died of massive head injuries and became the 27th fatality in the track's 35-year history. Rodney Orr was 33 years old and was running his first official laps when the accident occurred.
There's no easy answers to anything in life, and I think people would like, especially when they're hurting as bad as they're hurting right now, would like to say, oh, okay, here's a simple answer to a problem. Unfortunately, there's not a simple answer right now because we've got two unique problems that we're trying to figure. The hardest part, number one, is figure out if there's a problem, what the problem is, and then figure out what you can do to solve it.
Neil's car hit the wall just right. Rodney Orr's car hit the wall just right. It's a bad deal.
In trouble on pit road is Jeff Bodine.
Third tire change of this race for Jeff Bodine. The tires are all up and the wear looks pretty even. But Bodine, who had already gone to the tail of the field, made a chassis adjustment and gone back out, is fitting his third set of tires in this brief event. No chassis adjustment, just fresh rubber, and he's away.
The tire war between Hoosier Race Tire and Goodyear was ended faster than Desert Storm after the Thursday skirmish in the 125s. All of them switched to Goodyear. The whole field is on Goodyear tires again today out here. It was a big story all week about those Hoosiers who've taken the pole with Loy Allen.
Yeah, they were faster for a few laps, but in the race they just were not what they intended for them to be when they came here.
For the third straight year on a Saturday in May, they've been packing them in at Charlotte Motor Speedway since noon today for the Winston Select. Over 100,000 people are on hand just north of the city of Charlotte.
Goodyear has won all 10 Winston Cup races, although Hoosier has copped a couple of poles, including the pole position for tonight's running of the Winston Select Open. The Hoosier tire is said to be as much as 0.4 of a second quicker, but that's in cool weather. When they ran this afternoon in the heat, the Hoosier tire was not nearly as quick.
Look at the 28 car trying to get by Bodine on the outside. I don't think he'll make that move, but look at him make that move across the grass.
Through the grass, he's gone.
Oh, man.
And Hoosier Tires making its first victory of the season. Sterling Marlin will battle Schrader for second. It's Bodine off the corner to win it.
Yes, watch this. He'll do a tap dance on top. Yes.
But great for Hoosier, their first win, a big win for Hoosier. A big win for this team.
Ernie Urban is clinging on to life in a Michigan hospital.
He apparently cut a tire down exiting turn 2.
He crashed the Robert Yates Haviland Ford hard into the turn 2 wall yesterday during a practice run. It resulted in a fractured skull, injured lung, and other injuries. He is listed in critical condition.
Jeff Bodine trying to pick up his third victory in 1994. Final lap. In a lap to himself. Celebration on pit road. Jeff Bodine takes the win.
This XI Ford was just flying. Hoosiers, hey, they're here to stay, aren't they?
Hey, this driver is the greatest guy in the world.
It is a beautiful day in Atlanta as we get set to bring you live coverage of the final NASCAR Winston Cup race of 1994, the Hooters 500. To pit road, here's Dr. Jerry Punch.
The big concern of this week is tires. Remember, this track was newly paved back in the early part of August, and although Goodyear and Hoosier both tested here, no one could predict what was going to happen here this week. Now, the big problem here has been speed. The entire field broke the track record here at Atlanta Motor Speedway, including the pole sitter, who broke it by about 5.5 miles per hour. The concerns became reality yesterday when the right rear tire began to wear on the inside margin. A 2-inch segment on the inside margin is where they had significant wear. That occurred at about 30 to 35 laps. If we have 35-lap wear today, it'll be a serious problem with pit strategy.
The sold-out crowd is on its feet, and here we go for the final time in 94. The race is on.
They're scheduled to have a caution. In fact, I believe that Flagman has it in hand right now.
Yes.
Caution is coming out. This is a tire check caution.
And Greg Sachs has hit the wall. Look at the damage on the right side.
Well, something happens to the right front. He loses the air in the right front tire. He goes in the wall. And we've got a crash on the front straightaway as Loy Allen is in the wall. Wow, some heavy contact to the Hooters Ford.
Here is what happened.
Apparently the right front tire gave way, Bob, and boy, he went straight into that wall, hit it hard.
And although he perhaps was moving around in there, there apparently is some injury. You can see the car. Oh, a hard hit by Jeff Bodine, and the car erupts in flames down the main straightaway. Just terrific impact here at the just close to the start finish.
And watch his crew desperately run down to see if their driver is okay and to get him out of the car. Please, guys, don't, because there is some fire there.
Well, now they get the fire extinguishers. Other pit crew members come to the aid of Jeff Bodine.
That's Bodine getting out. Jeff Bodine is out of that baby.
Oh, well, they're lifting him out at least.
It looked like he was kind of on his, he was helping them, it looked like.
Yep, he's going to walk. Well, no, I guess not. Into turn number 4, off the corner, looking for the checkered flag. Mark Martin wraps up the 1994 NASCAR Winston Cup season with a victory here at Atlanta. Mark Martin wins the Hooters 500.